My name is Rob Hinton. I am the owner of a company called Holdfast Elite Limited, which runs the Holdfast Challenges, a fantastic outdoor challenge experience. I'm also a Royal Navy mine clearance diver veteran and former commercial diver in oil and gas, and a former military diving instructor.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Big Scuba podcast. My name is Ian. I am one of the co-hosts of this podcast, and with me is, by the power of Zoom today, is...
Hello, my name is Gemma, and I am the other co-host of the Big Scuba podcast. Welcome.
Welcome. Thanks for downloading this episode. Right from the top, let me tell you, these episodes are sponsored by the lovely people at NART90. They are, Gemma, Beyond Technical.
Yes. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So this podcast is all about scuba diving and people connected to the watery world. We talk to people from around the globe, from all walks of life.
There's a song around the world, isn't there? Around the world, around the... Who sung that?
I don't know.
Daft Punk.
Okay. Anyway, so yeah, we've spoken to scuba divers of all levels.
No, scuba divers? Talk to scuba divers on this podcast.
We have. But we've also spoken to astronauts, underwater filmmakers. We've even spoken to actors of films about the underwater world. We've spoken to sculptors, artists. So it's a very diverse podcast.
Yeah. And we will just chat to anyone, really. You know, if you've got an interest in the water and you like getting under the water, then come say hello. We'll have a chat with you.
Exactly. And if you've got any recommendations for future guests, point them in our direction.
Yeah, we'll have them on. We'll find out their story and what they've been up to, and anything weird and wacky that they've got to share. So we even better. So that'd be good. We should also say hello to someone who's been really kind and give some great feedback and review. Hello to Dave Pearson.
Yes, thank you, Dave. He's put a recommendation out to listen to this podcast. He's given us a great review, and we really appreciate your recommendations and your appreciation of the podcast.
Yeah, and thank you very much. And we do love that, and it does help. It's a free way to support our podcast. It's and it just helps the algorithm monkey things that are out there that are working, beavering away, and it helps other people find us. So if you can, please do leave us a review wherever you download your podcast. That'd be really cool and good. We've got some news, and also in this episode we have got a great guest for you. His name is Rob Hinton. He's an ex-Royal Navy mine clearance guy, and he does some really great stuff now. We're training people up and challenging them to really get out of their box and new experiences and stuff. Bit of team building.
And it's all based around the Navy mine clearance training that he went through, which sounds, well, you'll hear, but very rigorous. And yes.
It's called Holdfast.
Yes, which is a Navy term.
It is.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll let him explain all that.
Yes.
So, that's what we get him on for, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So what other news? We have our outreach partners are Reef World Green Fins.
Ooh, what's going on with them?
They have been doing a lot of work in Indonesia. So they give us a press release every so often. So yes, we'll give them a shout out in the week and pop a post up. So keep posted with their news.
Yeah, really good organisation, and so do make sure you are following them if you're not following them already. The Reef World Foundation and Green Fins.
Yes, if you're going on holiday to particularly Indonesia, that area, they kind of give dive centres an approval if they are friendly to the environment. So that's always a good check when you're thinking about going diving in those parts of the world.
Yeah. A previous guest and of Many times actually. I've been, and someone who we follow closely and has inspired us in our diving world. Christina Sonato got recognised this month as Diver of the Year, which is pretty cool. So
That's
well done.
impressive, isn't it?
Yeah, that's for all the it's particularly for all the work that she does with sharks.
Hmm.
So a great shout. And also, the Women Divers Hall of Fame got recognised as well this month as well with the is it the international?
It was it's called the Scuba Diving Hall of Fame
That's it.
2025. So there were three new people inductees, Michelle Cove, Anne Hayson, and Rosemary Lunn. And Rosemary Lunn is a friend of the podcast. She's been featured on several podcasts episodes, isn't she?
It's always good catching up with Rosemary, and saw her at the dive show, and it's always good to have a chat
Give her a wave.
like this.
Yes, but congratulations to the three of them. That's quite an achievement.
I'll blow her a kiss.
She'll appreciate that from
She
you.
will. She'll love it. No, she tunes in every time.
So look up the Scuba Diving Hall of Fame, and look at the current inductees and these three new people.
Yeah. I've got to say congratulations to Stony Cove, the guys there for they got a certificate, for a certificate of commendation. But it's go back to 2023, but they literally just now got it, and it was for upholding the highest standards of conduct in life-saving situation. So all you divers at Stony Cove, us included, we dive in that safety of knowing that the team are well trained, ready. As soon as there's a shout out, they're there, bang, and in a moment's notice, they're out on that boat to help anybody, and they're fully trained, and they make it possible for us lot all to go diving. So
yes, yeah,
little round of applause for those guys for what they did.
Yeah, it's a great achievement. Also, another previous guest, Jimmy Sues, he has been recognised as the new regional coach for the Eastern region.
Yeah, I saw it. It was really good, isn't it?
Yeah. He's got a dive centre. It's based in Bedford area.
Yeah. Regional coach, isn't he?
Yeah. So do look it up. And again, it's supporting another local dive centre.
Yeah. Yeah. So well done, Jimmy. We'll see you at the Cove at some stage, I'm sure, this year.
Yeah, and if you want to listen into our previous episode, that was back in 2023. We released a chat with Jimmy Sues. He was ex-military, wasn't he, as well?
He was, yeah.
And
yeah,
I think at the time we spoke to him, he was based in Greece at a dive centre there. So
yeah. Did I see Mary Hass get an award as well this recently for the work that she does with her 1,000 Tire project in Plymouth?
Yes, I'm just trying to look that one up. I know she posted.
Yeah, there was some sad news that we lost Rex Cohen, who's been in the diving world for years, author of Castaway and Wrecked, and has been instrumental in going back in the sort of 60s and onwards, of discovering many wrecks, and also involved with Mary Rose. So thoughts to his family and friends.
Yes, yeah, he certainly made his mark on the history of the maritime history.
Yeah, long life, 98. So it's good.
Yeah, and obviously an active soul.
Yeah.
What else have we got? Well, we can give another shout out to our local dive centre, Crystal Sea Scuba. Trudy is now part of the. She's a search technician with the Norfolk Lowland Search and Rescue Team.
Wow, I might go and get myself lost just so I have to call her out.
She'll get Ian. Where are you? Yeah, so that's really good, and it's great to see transfer of skills, isn't it? From being
when she goes out in a camper van.
Yeah.
Well, because it'd
Makes
be
cups.
handy, wouldn't it? Because at least you could then make the injured party a cup of tea.
Yeah, offer some shelter. Yeah.
Us Brits will all need a cup of tea when there's a time of trouble. Everything's all fine, when if there's a cup of tea at hand, don't matter what's going on, you have a cup of tea, everything's all fine.
It does make a difference. Yeah. So well done.
Yeah.
What else? We haven't we went out on the paddle boards a couple of weeks ago, didn't we?
Yeah, look up my conks. Great.
Yes, yeah, you can see it in the background here.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, so there are chosen paddle boards for this season. McConk's UK based.
We are hoping to get actually in the water, aren't we, in the next sort of 2 or 3 weeks, really, bit of luck. So
Yeah, in and under the water. Yeah.
You and I have both had what's the word? Family things going on. So just that time that we go through, of life. So
we have work to do, we have families to look after, and we have a podcast to run, and plus everything else in the world.
So it'd be nice to actually get back in the water, really. Well, hopefully soon.
Yeah, we're looking forward. We've got a couple of dive trips booked. We're going off to Lundy, and we've got the Farne Islands to look forward to. So
look forward to that.
Yeah.
Good. We should also say hello to our friends at Sports Financial Services, who also sponsor this podcast. And so hello to you guys. And we'll be catching up with them soon.
Yeah, and they're specialists in life insurance for people involved in more dangerous activities, including scuba diving and things like rock climbing, any dangerous sports. It's just making sure that you've got the right insurance, life insurance, should anything happen, that you're fully covered.
Yeah. Jem, did you know you have to get your regulators serviced if you're going to go diving?
Well, I did.
Just to get that done. You can do it yourself if you're qualified and you know what you're doing and you're confident enough to do it. You got to remember, you are going to be breathing on them. So I wouldn't attempt to do it unless you're really, really 100% sure you know exactly what you're doing.
Absolutely not. No,
if you don't, what can you do?
You can look up your local dive or contact your local dive centre and find out if they do servicing, or your local.
Most do, to be fair.
Yes, or somewhere where you go diving. Like somewhere like Stony Cove, see if they've got a servicing department.
Yeah, they do as well.
Yeah, and really, they should be serviced once a year.
Yeah, roughly, yeah.
They are your.
If you haven't used them for a long while, so say you've been, I don't know, maybe you've had an injury, maybe you've been unwell or something like that, or just hadn't dived for, let's say, a couple of years, say. It'd be worth, because you're dealing with tiny little bits of rubber, usually inside the regulators and that, and they stick, they perish, like everything else. It's worth putting them, especially if you've been in the sea.
Yeah,
it's worth getting. And hoses. When was your last? When were they fitted? They don't last forever. They do last a long while, to be fair. But how long they've been on there. So it's worth checking, and it's worth getting them checked. If you don't know what you're doing yourself, 100%, it's worth spending the money, get them serviced, getting them in. Also your BCD as well. People forget about maintaining your BCD or your wing. Get them in, get them checked.
Yeah. And also check your tank, your scuba tank. Is it still valid? Is it in date? Does it need a retest? Yeah, because it's easy. A lot of people turn up to get their tank refilled and then it's refused because it's out of test.
Yeah, it's not end of the world unless you're going to go away, but it's worth getting it all checked. If you don't know yourself, take it to your dive centre, get them to check before they fill it up, because otherwise, it's going to get refused.
Yeah, and then obviously the other thing is your dry suit. If you're diving in a dry suit, it's always a good idea just to get those serviced so that the seals can be checked, the valves can be checked.
The seals?
Seals. Yes, it was. It was seal day a few days ago. The other seal, though, the live seals.
What, these ones?
Yeah, sea lions. So yes, your dry suit, give it a check over, because I'm sure if you don't dive over the winter, they're just hung up. But
Yeah,
yes,
do the zips. Get them zips all nicely done, lubricated, so they're
lubricated.
easy
Yes.
to open and close and what have you.
Yeah, and then yeah, have a look at the rest of your diving equipment, your mask, snorkel, fins.
Yeah, things perish over the winter, don't
They
they?
do. Yeah.
Mice get in and all sorts. So yeah, make sure it is all ready to go before you go jump in.
Yes, and then
Worth
you
doing a
need,
check dive as well. So keep it shallow. If you haven't dived for a little while, don't make it a deep one straight away.
yeah.
Just do a shallow one. Get your head back into diving again, and just keep it shallow. 5-6 meters. Just check everything over.
Yeah, have a look at things like accessories, like your reels. Do you need a slate? And our friends at Arctic 90, they have all sorts of um, goodies that you can sort of purchase to increase your
Yeah,
diving equipment library, I suppose you'd call it, or wardrobe.
yeah. They don't just stock all the dive computers and rebreathe the stuff. They sell all your accessories as well. So as Gemma said, reels and bits and bobs.
Yes, yeah. So, and we have recently promoted the new strobe, the Pathfinder Gen X.
I'm surprised how much chatter that thing still gets, isn't it? Because
Yeah,
as soon as you advertise, as soon as you put that on social media, the amount of comments and likes and people, it seemed to rage debate about, or £300 or 200, whatever it is, against one you can buy online for 50 quid and things like that. But as I said before, if you're down at 100 meters and your life dependent on one, what would you rather have? One
yeah,
that
yeah.
is guaranteed to get you home, or one that should work it down at those steps?
Yeah.
Should.
And if you haven't looked
Hope
up
it
this,
does.
yeah, if you haven't looked up the strobe, go to Narc at 90. It's got several settings on.
Seriously bright.
It's incredibly bright. Yeah. Yeah, it's and then it's particularly if you're a wreck diver,
And there's the bit on that which I thought was clever, is that they've timed one of the flashes. I can't remember which one, but there's a certain setting on that, and it's got like a double
Mm,
flash. So if you were diving and you turned your head, there's a chance you could miss it, the flash. And this is where it's different. So they've added a second flash, which is kind of out of sync. So even if you turned your head, chances are you are going to catch one of the flashes.
yeah, yeah, life-saving.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it's all about. You always got to get home at the end of the day, no matter how deep you are, but you always got to get home.
Yeah, and come out smiling.
Yeah, come out smiling. So that's kind of it, really, for our chatter, I think, on this one.
Yeah.
And it's probably a good time to get our guest on.
Yes, yeah. So we spoke to Mr. Rob Hinton, and yeah, as we say, he has set up holdfast challenges, but he talks about his previous history with the Royal Navy mine clearance, about his training,
Yeah.
and yeah, he was really interesting to talk to, wasn't he?
Yeah, and it's expanding as well because he's looking at other sites now, because this has been really popular with people, and a lot of people, get who are into fitness and running and doing all this exciting stuff. There's tough mudders and all these sorts of things out there. So these type of events and training is getting really, really popular, especially since COVID, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's a great way for team building, and to, show that great things are possible. You don't need to be a diver or even a swimmer to do these challenges.
No,
It is
no.
all about, taking on the challenge and having a lot of fun doing it, and a sense
Yeah.
of achievement at the end as well.
Yeah, he's done a lot. So do tune in.
Yeah. So this is the Big Scuba podcast and talking to Rob Hinton. Welcome to the Big Scuba podcast.
Yeah, welcome.
That's quite an introduction.
Thank you very much. Delighted to be here.
Great. So we obviously got connected on LinkedIn. So we've obviously looked into your history. So how did you start your scuba journey?
So my scuba diving journey begins back in 1999 in Cape Town. I'd actually gone out there to meet relatives of mine because my mother and my grandmother are both from Cape Town. And while I was there, I was playing rugby. And because once the rugby had finished, I had some free time. I was really, really interested in, starting diving or at least having a dive to see what it would be like. And I ended up doing my PADI open water and loved it so much that I actually ended up working for my dive instructor. So I would clean all the gear, charge all the cylinders, look after the boat, and in return, he gave me all my dives for free. So I ended up diving for a solid sort of 3 or 4 months, and that was my introduction into the diving world.
Wow, and all this was in South Africa.
This was all in Cape Town.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So what's diving like? Is it all sea-based?
Yeah, so they have you've got False Bay, and then within False Bay, there's lots of sort of smaller bays, if you like, and we dived off the beach in the sea, and then we dived from ribs, and it was very, very eventful. And my instructor was a very colourful individual. Let's just say that. So it was quite an introduction to scuba diving. But it was fantastic, great fun, and I went from open water to the next level up, which was advanced, I think, and then I did a lot of specialities. But essentially, I was just in the water every day, maybe 3 dives a day for quite an intense period.
Yeah, it's a great way of starting your diving career.
Yeah, yes, I think for me, I think it was one of the best because it wasn't like your sort of 35-degree Maldives, Mauritius, Red Sea sort of diving with crystal clear visibility. It was real. A lot of it was cold water stuff because you had the Atlantic side and then you had the Indian Ocean side, and visibility wasn't always great, but it was good. It was good enough for beginners. So it was a real sort of mixture, and I mean, believe it or not, I wore a 10 mil wetsuit.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
How on earth did you get that on?
Well, it was a real struggle actually, but
I bet.
In terms of the water temperature, some of the dives we were doing were down to nearly 40 meters, and so water temperature was pretty cold actually. So it was a nice piece of kit, but it could be emotional at times. Let's put it that way.
Gosh,
you don't need those hairs on your legs as you're trying to get on. Oh, just imagine.
Well, luckily I was a younger man, so I could cope with it physically.
Wow, that's certainly a great way to start. Yeah, definitely. So from there, where did you then go? Did you join the military?
Yeah, so I had a period of about a year where I managed to fit in dives in California and in the south of Brittany. And so I tried to keep my hand in and keep the diving going, but it all changed when I met a guy in my local gym when I was back in North Devon, and we were talking, and I said to him, look, if I wanted to get into diving as a career, what would be the best way to do it? And so he said to me, look, he was a saturation diver in the North Sea.
Wow.
And he said, the best way to do this is, if you're really serious about it, is try and go for the Royal Navy as a mine clearance diver, and you'll get all your tickets. And then later on, when you leave, you'll be fully qualified up, and then you can just transition into the commercial world. Yeah. And at that time, there was a boom in the sort of North Sea. And so there were a lot of Navy divers going that route. I didn't know that then, but that was the seed of me wanting to apply for the Royal Navy. And I have to be clear, my life had always been water-based. So before I started diving, I was a competitive swimmer.
Wow.
For many years. So I'd always been in the water, and it was second nature to me. So diving was something that because it was, water-based, it was something that I felt very comfortable with. And that's how I ended up going to Exeter Careers Office and applying to join as a clearance diver.
So outdoor swimming or in the pool, both?
So in the pool, so races. So from the age of 8 to roughly 16, I used to train every morning before school, then twice a week after school, then on a Saturday and a Sunday. And then if I wasn't training, we'd be going all over the UK to these competitive meets. So it was my life for a good 8 years.
Yeah, that takes some dedication.
Yeah, and like diving, an individual thing. It's so mentally, I think it was, whether it was deliberate or not, I think it really helped me with the diving, because I was very comfortable being alone in the water and not constantly having to have someone with you or being in comms with someone all the time.
And the discipline as well for that style of training, swimming training is
Yeah. But I'm not going to lie and say that I enjoyed every second of it, because it was it was quite brutal at times. But like you say, it was, if you could do that, then you knew later on that everything else seemed relatively straightforward.
So where's this deep connection with the water come from? Is that, are your parents, were your parents into swimming, diving, boating?
Yeah, so my father was a fanatical swimmer and water polo player.
Really? Wow.
So he grew up in North Devon. He was born in 1934, so 1950s was his sort of big time. And back then, water polo was a very, very popular local sport. So they used to get crowds of up to 1,000 people, and a lot of it was outdoor pools.
Wow.
So they were playing these outdoor pools by the sea in the summer. And then of course you'd have all the crowds coming, and it was really violent as well. So a lot of people love to watch the sort of competition of it. But so his life was always around the water.
You don't really hear much about water polo anymore.
You
So
don't.
what happened to that sport?
Well, I think it just died out in terms of when they had the outdoor pools back in the 50s, 60s, etc. I think it was pretty popular on a regional basis. I'm not saying it's popular nationwide, but certainly in Devon and Cornwall, it was very strong. And I think over time it's just died out because it's not visual anymore, and there's no outdoor pools left. So back then people could go on holiday, and if there was a game, they could literally just sit down and watch it, and so it was an easy sell. But nowadays, I think it's. I'm not saying it's disappeared, but I think it's almost invisible.
And it's all, the world has got a bit more PC.
Yeah.
I don't want to use the other word because a certain person in headlines uses that word quite a lot at the minute, but it's very PC. And I guess, and maybe people wouldn't want to see people bashing each other, but we like rugby. So
Funnily enough,
and boxing, we like boxing.
Yeah, and funnily enough, after I finished swimming, I played rugby for 23 years, and I've got to say, water polo was the hardest game physically that I've ever played. And I'm talking not necessarily from the physical confrontation side, but from the cardiovascular side, on a different level altogether. Because obviously you're having to support yourself in the water at all times, and then sprinting constantly backwards and forwards the length of the pool, and it was just continuous. So it was great. I only played it for a couple of years towards the end of my swimming time, but my dad played it for a long time, and he was a super fit guy, well into his mid-50s. He was still playing water polo at 49, 50 years old. So that's my link to the water.
Certainly.
What was their thoughts about you going in the Navy?
So originally I'd applied for the army as an officer, and
Okay.
I'd passed my initial pre-RCB, they call it. I'd gone down to Westbury, sat my 3-day course and passed it. So then it was a case of choosing a regiment to sponsor me. But at the time, I lost interest, and I think the reason for that was because the waiting period was quite long, and I'd actually sort of been bitten by the bug of wanting to see the world because I was playing rugby. I had some friends who'd been out to Australia and played for a club out there, and they put the seed in me of maybe sort of spreading my wings and getting a bit of life experience first. So my family on my mother's side are very heavily military. My mother's brothers were all in the armed forces, 2 in the army, 1 in the RAF. My granddad, her dad, was in the RAF for 36 years. My dad was in the army as national service. So it tended to be more sort of army based. But once I'd gone away and done my traveling, then for me, it became a case of, okay, I want to do something with the water.
Yeah.
So they were happy. They were happy with that.
I bet.
Yeah. So you entered your sort of Navy career, and were you straight into mine clearance?
No. So this is this is the thing. You can join as what they call a direct entry clearance diver. So that means rather than being already in the Navy and then in a different branch and having to transfer across, a direct entry means you can join from civilian life, and you're automatically registered as a clearance diver, but you're not until you've passed the course. So what happens is you join, you do your basic training down at HMS Raleigh. Then back then you had to go for what was called a clearance diver's aptitude test. So that was a week at Horsey Island. And I'll put it into perspective. So there were 29 on my aptitude week, and 3 of us passed.
Wow.
And all that meant was we were then allowed to go on to clearance diver course to start the training. So the course itself was, I think, 6 or 7 months long. So that was before you even got onto course. The aptitude week was horrendous.
Must have been.
It was so essentially, we had a fantastic guy, actually a legend of the branch, a big chief diver, and this guy was a man mountain, a guy called Darby Allen, and sadly he's no longer with us, but he was a Falklands War veteran, he was a Gulf War veteran, he was just a giant of the branch. Now, he was in charge of our aptitude. So if you can imagine, every day you weren't allowed to walk at Horsey Island. As soon as you got through the main gates, you had to run everywhere. So you would run best part of a mile from the main gate up to the classroom end. Then it would be continuous beastings, mud runs, circuits, 1,000-meter fin swims, 1,000-meter diving under the water, continuous diving all day, into the night, into the early hours of the morning, log carries, all sorts of stuff for 5 days. And then when you got to the Friday, he would tell you, yes, you've passed. You can then go on to clearance diver course, or you failed. And because his standards were so high, he refused to let anyone through that he didn't think would be worthy of the branch. So it was just one of those things where you just had to go for it. And luckily enough, I was one of the 3 that passed it.
Wow. Sounds like a hell of an experience.
Yes, it was. And the other thing to remember is, so my diving was very limited up to that point. Yes, I'd done a few dives, but certainly less than probably around 40 dives I'd done in total. So I had a foundation of diving, but I wasn't experienced at all. On my clearance diver course, when we turned up, there was a guy who was a PADI instructor in Oman, and he'd done over 6,000 scuba dives.
Yeah.
But equally, there were guys who'd done almost nothing, like literally maybe 1 or 2 dives. So it was a real mixture of experience. But military diving is nothing like scuba diving at all.
I
So
bet.
it was right from the word go. It was theory, water, go. So it was a very, very rapid learning curve.
This episode is brought to you by Narked at 90, the cutting-edge pioneers in the world of diving equipment. Meet the founders, John Routley and Brent Hudson, who have logged thousands of mixed gas dives over the past 3 decades. About 20 years ago, these experienced technical divers combined their passion for diving and engineering skills to create Narked at 90. Whether you're new to diving and ready to take it up a notch, have a fair amount of experience, or are considering a transition into technical diving, we highly recommend Narked at 90. They're ready to advise on the best equipment and setup for your personal and commercial needs. Narked at 90 also has extensive hands-on experience with shearwater and ratio dive computers, being the longest-serving UK service centre for these brands. They're ready to offer technical support, servicing, repairs and upgrades for all shearwater and ratio computers past and present. In addition to shearwater and ratio, Narked at 90 stocks and supports many other brands such as DiveSoft, JJCCR, Hollis, Revo and Kiss rebreathers. The diving community is always enthusiastic about Narked at 90 and it's easy to see why. Here are just a few reasons. Full head servicing for rebreathers from various manufacturers, bespoke cable assemblies, advice on specific fitting requirements, suggestions and guidance for home builds, computer laser cutting and engraving, CNC milling and turning, pressure testing to simulate 400-metre dives. We're thrilled to partner with Narked at 90, a company that has ignited so much passion for diving and has been incredibly supportive and innovative in producing and selling dive equipment. Visit narkedat90.com to see why they're a renowned name in diving. Stay updated on their insights and offers by following them on social media. Just search for Narked at 90 on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram and hit that follow button.
I guess when you talk about that guy who's the instructor from Oman and he's done 6,000 dives, but I suppose to the instructor doesn't mean anything, does it? Because they're not looking for that, they're looking for something more than that. And isn't it the Royal Marines say that is at 0.99 people will apply, but only 1% will pass, and I guess that is, and only certain it's best to weed all these people out at the start than it is halfway through.
That's exactly right. You've nailed it. And the thing about the branch is they don't care about any fanfare. They don't care about any shouting and screaming. It's all down to you. So the way they operate is, if you want to be here, you show us that you want to be here. So this is what you have to do. We don't want any fuss. We don't want any excuses. Just get on with it and get it done. And then once you've done that, you go on to the next part. And they don't care about your background. They don't care how fit you are. They don't care what you've done in the past. All they're interested in is, can you meet the standard of the branch? And if you can, you've passed. And if you can't, you're gone.
Egos get left at the gate.
Exactly. And, and I'll be honest, I mean, I was extremely fit when I turned up for a clearance diver course, but there were guys far, far faster than me at running, could do more press-ups, all these things. But actually that counted for nothing because it was all down to the mindset. Because if you can imagine, the diving was all done in dry suits as a clearance diver. So these dry suits were rubber dry suits with a latex neck seal and cuffs. And they were horrendous. They'd been used many, many times. They leaked everywhere. The latex used to burn your neck because obviously you're in the dry suit all day and sometimes all night as well. So you had this constant burn mark, almost like you tried to to take another option, if you like. And so, your hands were always cut and abrased, and everything was sore. It was brutal. I mean, it was brutal. And every day you had this horrendous CO2 headache, because you guys will know, you know, if you're trying to get more endurance out of your set and you go on to skip breathing, or you're trying to preserve, you know, what you've got left to get to the end of that sort of 1,000-meter long lake, you would come out at the end of days diving and your head would feel like it was about to explode. Then you'd go back, you'd sleep, and then the next morning you'd know you have to do it all over again. And this went on for weeks and weeks and weeks. So it's all about the mindset. And as we all know, when you're underwater, it's you. You know, there's no one there to sort of hold your hand and say, okay.
Was it all you know, scuba diving, or was it free diving in this as well?
No.
Working on breath holds.
No, so no breath hold diving. First phase was scuba. Then you went on to mixed gas rebreathers. Then you went on to surface applied, and then finally you went on to chamber dives.
Wow! And this is all in the part of the Navy training.
Yeah. So Horsey Island is the Defence Dive School. So that's 1,000-meter long former torpedo range, and they have the Army divers at one end and the Navy divers at the other end.
Oh, how does that work?
Say again.
And you all get on quite well?
Well, we don't have anything to do with each other, because if you can imagine, the Army were more or less 3/4 of the way down the far end of the lake, so a good 750 meters away. So all their diving ops took place down that end, whereas for the Navy guys, we used the whole lake. So one of the main things when you first learnt on course was your diving endurance. So one of the absolutely foundational standards that they wanted is you had to be able to swim 1,000 meters underwater on 2 equalizations of your scuba set. And if you couldn't do that, you'd come to surface however far you'd reached. You used to have to swim to the side of the lake, climb out, run back with the set on, and recharge and go again. And you do this all day and all night for weeks on end until you were able to reach the lock gates at the far end of the lake. So the Navy's training was essentially the full lake.
How deep were you going to do that?
So maximum depth, I think, was roughly 7 meters in the lake.
And you're only allowed to equalize twice?
Yeah. Yeah. So you had a twin set with a manifold linking the 2 cylinders. You'd open your left-hand valve.
Yeah.
You'd breathe down the first cylinder. Then you'd open the right-hand valve, 1 equalization. You'd carry on, breathe down the left cylinder again, then open the right-hand valve, 2 equalizations. And so that would be your endurance. However, in reality, it didn't work like that, because if you can imagine, as you progress through the course, you got to have a sense of where you were in the lake. And if you got 900 meters down the lake and you'd equalized twice, and you knew if you had to come up, swim to the side and run back and do it again, then you'd go for another equalization. So sometimes it would be a case of, just keep going.
Right. Do you talk about equalizing on the tanks?
Yes.
Not equalizing on your nose?
No. So if you can imagine, you had 2 cylinders inverted upside down. They had a manifold that connected both cylinders. Yeah. So one cylinder was closed, the other cylinder was open. So you breathe down 1 cylinder, then open the other valve and equalize both of them, and then close that valve and breathe off the other one that you'd filled up again.
So basically your efficiency at breathing on those tanks gets better and better as the course goes on and you make that 1,000 meters.
Absolutely, because you're learning all the time about your physical capabilities underwater. Is your breathing too hard? Are you swimming too fast? Are you fit enough to fin at that rate? Is your depth okay? Is your buoyancy all right? So this is all about becoming more and more comfortable in the water, and it's very, very intense. Like I said, you'd start 0800 every morning, and some days you might finish at 3 a.m. Then you go back to the base, and you might get a couple hours sleep, and then up again, and then straight into it the next day. And this went on the first phase went on for 10 weeks. Then week 11 was what they call live-in week. So that week was you would turn up at 0800 in the morning on the Monday, and you would finish round about 1600 Friday. And the whole week was designed to simulate wartime conditions. So it was a total sleep deprivation week. So you would be constantly beasted with circuits, jumping off the 10-meter platform, finning across the lake, your log carries, your 1,000-meter surface fin swims, continuous diving, your mud runs, and so for the first sort of 60 hours, there's no sleep at all. Then you had maybe 2-3 hours sleep. Then they would come in and throw what they call a thunder flash, an explosive charge. They would throw that into the room where you were sleeping, come in with the bin lids. Then you'd have to run, sprint back down to the top of the island and go again. So in the whole week, you probably got round about 7 to 8 hours sleep.
Right.
Did you sleep? Did you sleep in your dry suit?
Well, funnily enough, I don't know if you've ever heard of this before from anyone else, but I'm sure people have mentioned it. But I actually believe you can fall asleep underwater when you're diving, because if you can imagine, we would be doing these 1,000-meter swims by the time you got to sort of the Thursday night, and you were so tired, you were on almost alive and conscious, but not conscious. So you're in this sort of twilight zone of almost like an autopilot, and you'd just be finning, and it'd be totally dark. And then all of a sudden you would think, okay, now I'm back down the other end of the lake, but you'd have no real recollection of how you got there or whatever. So it's a very interesting test of your mindset and endurance capabilities.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think you probably do. And I think I wouldn't say you fall asleep as such, and you're unconscious type thing, but I think I think it's possible to be so relaxed in an environment that you feel so relaxed in that you can virtually go on to an unconscious, conscious autopilot.
I think you're right. I totally agree, and I've had that many times actually in my career, not just in the military, but in commercial diving as well.
Yeah, that's good, but it's also that's not good, because obviously you do want to be alert. But when you've been through that type of week, and energy levels are tested as max, you're gonna find times where you do relax, aren't you?
Definitely.
And what about decompression? Because you're in and out of the water so much. Does that come into it, or is it?
No, because everything is shallower than 10 meters.
Right.
So it's if you can imagine, even with the rebreathers, you're diving 1684 heliox. So, but because you're so shallow, so we used to do endurance swims. When you went onto the mixed gas phase with the rebreathers, you do 4-hour continuous swims to build up your endurance on the set. And so that was all, it could be 5 meters, 6 meters. It's all incredibly shallow. The deep diving stuff you do later in the course. So the initial first phase is all about familiarity with the sets and endurance and becoming comfortable in it. But one thing I should mention for myself is when I mentioned live-in week, so that was week 11, or used to be round about week 11. For me, I'd done up to the Thursday before live-in week, and then I got ears. So I got very common, because you're in the water every day, all day, all night. A lot of the guys develop ear infections. So I developed a pretty bad ear infection, and it meant I couldn't clear my ears.
Right.
Live-in week started on the Monday, and the guys said to me, okay, look, see how it is. And I'd taken the drops, which is what you did back then. It was, I think, silver acetate. And anyway, it didn't happen. So I had then to make the choice. What do you want to do? Do you want to transfer to another branch, or do you want to go back to the very beginning of the next course coming through?
No way.
So I had to start all over again and do the first 10 weeks again.
Oh, it's got to be soul crushing, that has.
Well, it wasn't. It wasn't because that when we talk about the mindset and we talk about your identity, what do you want to be?
Yeah.
I was faced with that question. Well, who am I and what do I want to be? Do I want to be the guy who was nearly a clearance diver and spend the rest of my life thinking, oh, well, I nearly did that and I could have been one of them? Or how badly do I want it?
Yeah.
So I decided, well, I'll just redouble my efforts and go back. So I started again on the next course and did it all again. So it was almost like I didn't even, once I committed to it, I didn't even question it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was week 11 done. And then does the course continue?
Yeah. So you then go on to, you have like your harbour phases. So you go down to Portsmouth Harbour, and they used to have a big destroyer there, HMS Bristol, which was alongside opposite the Brittany Ferries terminal.
Mm-hmm.
And you would go down there and you would do all your ship's bottom searches. And at the time, we used to use what was called a necklace. So that was, you would have up to 6 clearance divers, so 1 surface swimmer, and then 5 divers, 1 on the keel of the ship, and the other 4 connected to him by a length of rope all the way up to the surface, and the last man connected to the surface swimmer. And then the surface swimmer would direct the search. He would swim along and give you signals all the way down the line. And that was horrendous because you do it obviously you do it during the day, but you'd also do it at night. And it was most of the time nil visibility. And if you can imagine, if you were the keel swimmer, you'd be the deepest guy with all the other guys above you connected, not being able to see anything, having to feel the keel of this ship, because the idea is you're checking it for mines or anything that shouldn't be there. And the added bonus was the Brittany Ferries, when they used to back out from alongside, by maritime law, if there was a flag alpha up for diving operations, they had to come out very, very slowly. Unfortunately, we had a scenario where this one ferry came out and put the revs on the propellers.
Right.
And as a result, we were literally washed from one side of the ship right under the keel in a huge knot of 5 divers connected to this line wrapped all around you in black water. Nobody knew what was up, what was down, and we ended up on the mud on the far side of the ship. And you were completely powerless to do anything about it. It was actually quite terrifying at the time. But that, so all these things, that was all part of the ship's bottom search phase. Then you had your harbour searches where we went down to Cornwall, and you'd go out and you'd lay search patterns in the bays and do all your sort of training there. And then you go on to your deep diving phase, which was up in the Isle of Skye in the Kyles of Loch Alsh. So it was many different phases to the course.
Yeah.
Blimey, seasoned diver doesn't even cover it, does it?
I just imagined, that going on in the Portsmouth. That must have been horrendous. Especially because you hear all the sounds as well, don't you?
Yeah, for sure. But Portsmouth was, the joke was when I joined, my recruitment officer said to me in Exeter Careers office, he said, "You want to be a diver?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Do you think you would like sitting on the bottom of Pompey Harbour in black water, searching for mines?" And at the time, I remember saying, "Yeah, that sounds great." And actually, it is exactly like that. And Pompey Harbour is just black water soup, so you don't see anything, and it's soft mud, and it's grim. So the diving, very very few dives had any form of glamour to them at all, and a lot of them were nil visibility as well. So it was a real, if you didn't like being uncomfortable, if you had claustrophobia, it definitely wasn't for you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, that sounds, it's an amazing thing. So where did you then start traveling the world in your position as mine clearance diver?
So I was very lucky. I finished my course, and I was, traditionally you'd be drafted straight to sea. So you go to a mine hunter for your first draft. But because of the way the manning requirements were, I was very lucky and I got sent to one of the fleet teams. So Fleet Team 2, which was the one I joined, was what was called a VSW team, so a very shallow water operations team. So their job at the time was worldwide ops, and it was beach reconnaissance, beach clearance, and sort of relatively sneaky beaky stuff. So they dived rebreathers for this. And so when I joined that team as a baby diver, I had fantastic leadership. The boss of the team and the chief divers were extremely welcoming and inclusive of me. So I was able to go and do a lot of courses that a diver in my position would not normally have the opportunity to do. So I did my escape and evasion. I did my LIBA rebreather training, which was a different kind of rebreather. I went to various places around the world for exercises and deployments. I did the UK submarine rescue, the mini sub that the Royal Navy had just brought in. I did all these things. So I was on that team for about a year. Then I was drafted to my Minehunter, and I spent 2 years on a Minehunter up in Faslane on HMS Inverness.
Wow. Yeah.
That was amazing experience that was.
Well, the Minehunter, as any clearance diver will tell you, being at sea is a duty and not necessarily a pleasure. and as a clearance diver, every Minehunter at the time would have a clearance diver team on it. So you would carry out your mine hunting operations from small inflatable boats, and you would do all kinds of diving operations, not just mine hunting, but ship's bottom searches and maintenance, all these different things. But because of the watch system on the ship, normally your diving operations took part when you were off watch. So you'd have to do all your watch duties on the ship first.
Right.
Then in your downtime, you would go diving. So it was, some of it was quite exciting. You used to have a mini submarine, bright yellow, called a PAP, and the PAPs were a fiber optic guided remote submersible, which they were quite large. If you imagine, probably, I would say, half the size of a mini car.
Okay.
A fairly decent size. They would launch these, and it would have an explosive charge underneath it. So then they would guide these with this fiber optic cable down to a suspected mine or whatever it was, and it would drop a charge, and then a buoyancy weight would drop off the PAP, and this mini submarine would float to the surface. Now, that was in theory. So when you were at sea at night, and it could be a sea state 4, 5, 6, whatever, something crazy, the fiber optic cables used to snap all the time. So they would lose control of the PAP. And as a clearance diver, your primary duty was PAP recovery. So if you can imagine, you'd have 2 clearance divers being launched off the side of this flat-bottomed Minehunter in horrendous sea states at night. We would have to take the Gemini out, hook the PAP, drag it back to the ship, and this thing weighed a few tons. So, the power of your maneuvering was really limited. Yeah. You'd have to maneuver it to the back end of the Minehunter, and they'd lower a crane hook. And obviously, with the sea state, the Minehunter would be going up and down. And you'd have to hook this PAP on, and they would raise it from the crane and then move out the way and then go back alongside the ship to be recovered. So, as a clearance diver, that sound on the main broadcast, divers to the boat deck, PAP recovery, absolutely dreaded it. But it was really exciting. I can't lie. It definitely made you feel alive.
It's certainly an exciting time.
Yeah, it was a great job. Yeah, and that's before we even go into the mine clearance and bomb disposal side. That was something completely separate as well. So that's just the diving side, really.
Yeah. So you were in service 22 years? Is that?
No. So I did about 6.5 years as a clearance diver.
Okay.
And then I left, and the scenario was I had a young family, two boys, very young, and my ex partner had 2 children as well from before we met. So we had, quite a few children, and basically my unit that I was in at the time, Northern Diving Group in Faslane, I was ready for promotion, to be put on the promotion signal. But that meant 6 months down in Portsmouth for the course. And even if I passed it, absolutely no guarantee of getting a draft back up to Scotland. So we stayed in Edinburgh at the time. So I was faced with that situation where if I went for career, I wouldn't see the family pretty much for 6 months while I was on the course. But also, I could very well be faced with the situation where I'd be based down in Plymouth and the family were up in Edinburgh. So I took the decision, or we took the decision, okay, I've had a good run, really enjoyed it, but a lot of pressures from having a young family. So the time now is for the change.
Yeah.
So
And then you went on to do what?
So as I mentioned beforehand, at that particular time, the commercial diving industry or the oil and gas industry was booming. And I'd had a lot of friends who'd already left the clearance diver branch and transitioned into commercial divers. So, and I'll give you an example. In my one unit, there was about 35 guys on Northern Diving Group. And in one go, I think six of us left the Royal Navy in pretty much one period to go into commercial diving, or to go to, well, one guy went off to New Zealand to join the New Zealand clearance diving branch. So there was a huge drain on the branch at that time for the oil and gas industry, and they just had a big strike, and the day rate had just almost doubled for the North Sea. So financially, it was hugely rewarding. So that's what happened. I used all my sort of what they called enhanced learning credits to do any courses that I needed to do as part of my resettlement, and then I literally instantly went into commercial diving, even while I was on terminal leave from the Navy.
Wow. So, and was that on like rigs offshore or support vessels?
Yes. So the way it worked is you did everything. So the commercial diving, I was an air and mixed gas diver, so I wasn't saturation. So I did a lot of inshore work, which could be harbour work, it could be dams, reservoirs, it could be all sorts of different things. But I also did a lot of offshore work in the North Sea, in the Middle East, in West Africa, in Scandinavia, and it could be oil rigs, it could be ships, it could be fjords, river estuaries, pipeline work. I mean, it's endless, absolutely endless. And that was the beauty of commercial diving, is you very rarely did the same job.
Yeah, it's exciting. And where it takes you around the world and the people you meet, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's a very, very colourful industry. And it's almost akin to, at some points, I would equate it to the Wild West. And I don't mean necessarily the North Sea, because that's pretty regulated and they've got good health and safety standards. But some regions of the world and some areas of commercial diving were definitely not at the same standard as the North Sea. And as divers, you met some of the most colourful people you've ever met in your life. And I'm sure we all know from the diving world, you meet some interesting people. So it was definitely a job that kept me on my toes. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. What about saturation diving? Did you did you sort of consider that?
No, I didn't. And the reason for that is because, money aside, it was the proximity and the inability to escape from that proximity that I didn't like. So obviously, once you're in SAT, you're in normally, say, a 6-man team or a 3-man team, but there could be 6 of you all together, and you're in that chamber, regardless of what happens, that's it. And you've got you have to have a very, very close working relationship with the guys that you're working with. And for me, it wasn't worth the stress of putting myself into that situation. And don't get me wrong, in air and mixed gas diving, some jobs I've spent 3 months in a 6-man cabin, but that's different, because if you're on a barge or a boat or inshore in a hotel or whatever it is, you still have that element of separation.
Yeah.
And still, manage to get away and get some peace if you need to. But in SAT, I knew myself that's not what I wanted.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole different setup, and we have spoken to SAT divers, and to be stuck in a capsule for what was it, 28 days? It's a long time. Yeah.
And interestingly enough, I've met, obviously I know a great deal of SAT divers. A lot of friends are still in SAT diving now, but I've also met guys who had horrendous experiences in SAT, where they would go in as a replacement for a guy who'd become ill or injured or whatever. And if you can imagine, you've got, say, a 3-man bell team. They've worked together for years, very, very closely, very tight-knit unit.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, this complete stranger comes in, and there's a chance that stranger could permanently replace the guy who has been injured or due to unforeseen circumstances. And I've met guys who had really, really negative experiences where they were almost completely shunned by the guys they were working with and resented. I'd say that's pretty rare, but that was definitely at the back of my mind, where I just didn't want to put myself in that sort of uncomfortable position.
Yeah, I think that's true. So from there, you were in commercial diving for a good few years then?
Yeah, so best part of 15 years as a commercial diver, and a huge amount of that I spent in Norway.
Wow.
I worked on and off in Norway for pretty much my entire commercial diving career, and then certainly the last 5 years I was there pretty constantly, and got to a position where I was supervising a lot of the jobs for a year, and that was a fantastic experience. To supervise these sort of diving operations on huge rigs or ships, and very, very rewarding experience. And my final job actually was, believe it or not, in Scapa Flow in the Orkneys for a Norwegian dive company, and it was what they call a thruster change out. So on the rigs, you have these huge propellers that stick out from underneath the rigs.
Yeah.
Well, it was changing one of them out and putting a new one in. So
wow.
that was like a bread and butter operation for the diving company I did work for in Norway. We did hundreds of them over my time there. So it was quite spectacular work, but I really enjoyed Norway, because not just the fact it was a beautiful country, it was just a very straightforward, no nonsense environment to work in. You just got on with the job. The North Sea could be a little bit prima donna-ish. It could be almost sometimes suffocated by HSE, whereas Norway had the same standards, but they were much more practical and straightforward with it.
Yeah,
Wow.
interesting.
So where did the idea of hold fast come from?
So once I finished commercial diving, I ended up with a job which is totally bizarre, actually. So I live in East Lothian, near Edinburgh. I just decided I've had enough of commercial diving, and I bumped into a guy walking down the street in North Berwick High Street. And sorry, I tell a lie, I didn't bump into him. I went into this guy's place of work, nothing to do with diving. And I said, do you know if there's any work going locally? And he said, listen, your skill set is not what I'm looking for, but my brother has just invested in a military diving company that makes rebreathers based just outside Edinburgh. So I said, that's absolutely crazy. Like, what are the chances of that? So anyway, cut a long story short, he introduced us. I ended up working as a military dive instructor for this company for just under 2 years, sort of traveling the world and doing various training courses for them. But what it meant was I had a lot more time at home. And for the first time for sort of 20 years, I had a situation where I had time to think about what I could do in my own time instead of working 12-hour shifts and just this constant 7 days a week thing. So I'd always had a passion about training outside. And obviously, the clearance diver course I'd really enjoyed because it was everything that I loved. And I thought one day, why don't I look at creating an outdoor experience that I can use my experiences as a clearance diver, the mindset and sort of the outdoor challenge to benefit people, create this ultra positive community and try and instill this sort of superb mindset. So I literally one day drove straight into this water activity park, Fox Lake in East Lothian, and it was winter. And I said to these really confused young guys and girls who were working there, look, I've got an idea for a challenge. Could I use Fox Lake? So they said, look, the owner's not here, but give him an email because he loves all this sort of stuff. I emailed him, and about a week later, he got back to me and he said, Rob, this sounds absolutely fantastic. Come and have a chat. So from that impulse moment to just driving in and saying, look, this is what I want to do. A couple of months later, I had a company, Holdfast Elite Limited. I had a stock of wetsuits, a stock of fins. I planned everything out. He gave me Fox Lake for the winter for nothing.
Wow.
And I ran my first challenge, I think, beginning of December in 2021 with 6 guys, 6 guinea pigs. And that was the beginning of it. And now we are 3 years later in a very, very different situation.
Yeah.
And how many courses have you run since you started?
So we have run 55 challenge days.
Wow.
We've had a few thousand people through the Holdfast challenges. We've helped to raise well over £60,000 for various charities. We've had Shell, the oil company. We've had Mace Group Construction. We've had 4-5 Commando Royal Marines. We've had many, many schools. We've had the Doddy Weir the My Name's Doddy Foundation, Edinburgh Children's Hospital charity. We've had multiple gyms. We've done a bomb disposal challenge for Felix Fund. We've had all sorts, the whole of society, and we have a 100% 5-star review rating from 55 challenges. And we've now got sites in Scotland, 3 in England. We've got the Holdfast mission to get every state high school in the UK involved in it. And it's just been absolutely fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah. So these challenges, it's kind of a more like your military training.
Yes, but it's not a military challenge. So so that's one thing I've had to be very, very clear on. So it's based on clearance diver training exercises, but the day is all about the mindset. And so I created this ethos, which is the core of the company is no fuss, no excuses, just get it done. And by doing that, spread that positivity onwards. And so what it is really, it's almost like an anti-society thing where, in this day and age, we all know we've got like a risk-averse society. We've got this blame culture. We're less and less active. Social media is so heavy now, but a huge amount of it is absolute nonsense. So really what the Holdfast Challenges is designed to do is, first of all, was to instill this hugely positive mindset in you. So if you want to do something, you get out there and you get it done. You never look for excuses why you can't do it. You just get out there and smash it. And the second thing is really, it's about community, creating this community of fantastic people who spread that. And by going and doing a Holdfast challenge, they know they can achieve whatever they want. And then they just pass that onwards. So it's all about the mindset. It suits all fitness levels from age 13. The oldest person we've had is 69 years old, believe it or not.
Wow.
We've had a guy with cancer in both lungs. We've had ladies with phobias of water and of heights and all sorts of stuff. And it's just been a tremendously positive thing. And, this is just the beginning. So the idea is we'll get it into all the state schools, but also into all the workplaces, into every level of society. So eventually we have this this brilliant community that just gets on with it and gets things done.
Yeah.
And I suppose, sorry, go on, Joe.
I was just going to say, the challenge, is it a day or does it last a couple of days?
Yeah, so how it works is we have like public challenges where we'll advertise it on our website, people can book onto it, or we have corporate challenges where they bring a group of 10, 20, 30, 50, whatever they want. And then we have the schools challenges, which are up to 50 or 60 kids at a time. And they'll come. And if it's a big challenge, it can last roughly about 6 hours. Now, that's not 6 hours on the challenge. That's 6 hours from arrival, briefing, changing, the challenge itself, changing again, get your T-shirt, presentations, and off you go. So it's about half a day experience in total.
Oh, it's awesome.
It is, isn't it? And people, I guess everybody will come with different expectations, and their level of success will be different to other people. So what first, as you said, some people will have a phobia about the water, so they might not win the race, but actually to get in the water for them is a success, and that's a positive and a win.
That's exactly right. You've absolutely nailed it, and that's why we say it's suitable for all, because it doesn't matter how fit you are.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what your abilities are. The point is you're challenging yourself.
Yeah.
And when you come into that environment, we always hammer home that message about the day is all about you. It's about no fuss, no excuses, just get it done. And you're not comparing yourself to anyone else. You're working for your team, your group, your friends, your club, whatever it is. And you get on there and you get it done. And it's such a positive, uplifting experience that all you have to do is you can go to our Facebook page, Hold Fast Challenge. You can read the reviews, and it's just a superb thing. And I'll give you an example. We've had many young people who it literally has changed the way they approach their life, because they've come onto it and they've been bombarded by all these messages from society and social media about, you can't do this, you can't do that, or this could happen, or that could happen. The first thing we say to them is, look, forget about all that nonsense. The only thing you have to understand about today is that mindset. And by the end of that challenge, I've had many messages, direct messages on social media or email, whatever it is. A lot of the young people have gone on to join the military for military careers because they've been inspired by it. A lot of youngsters, we did a school challenge, a state school challenge last year. They wrote it into their personal development skills for the curriculum, and we got the feedback. And a lot of these youngsters have said, look, it's totally changed the way I look at life. Now I know I can just go out there and get it done. And before I was, always looking for barriers, always looking for excuses, but this has really given me the confidence to know that I can do whatever I want. So it's a very, very positive message, and it's very important in this day and age.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And it is just, it's almost a race or a challenge for yourself. And, aside everybody else, it's, and we say that, Ian and I say that it is, you're challenging yourself. It's not thinking, oh, I'm beating him or.
That's it. And also, because it's so unusual, 99.9% of the UK have never heard of the clearance diver branch. They've got no idea who they are, what they do, and what the history is or anything. So throughout the challenge, we always try and educate people. Okay, look, this is what it's based on. So everything that you're doing is linked to what the clearance divers used to do. And so many people have never put a pair of fins on. So we all know that, we take it for granted sometimes as divers. You go, just stick your fins on and start finning on your back. Well, a lot of people never put a pair of fins on in their life. Yeah. And what's really, really rewarding is when you see these people, they stick the fins on, you tell them, what to do. They go in the water, and within less than 60 seconds, they're like human torpedoes. And that sort of sense of achievement and fun is a lot of people, that's their favorite part of the challenge is putting the fins on and doing some finning.
Yeah. And you use O3 semi-dries, we see.
Yes, so I got a fantastic relationship with O3. So as a commercial diver, I wore O3 dry suits, the MS 500, I think it was. And so what I did was, when I set the company up, I got in touch with them and I bought a batch of 6 mil semi-dries and also 3 mils.
Yeah.
And so now I've got a stock of over 100, well, in fact, probably best part of 150 6 mil and 3 mil O3 suits and boots and gloves. And I have to tell you, I have not needed to replace a single wetsuit. The quality is so good that they're just phenomenal. And I use Northern Diver fins. So I've got a great relationship with both those companies.
Yeah. We love our semi-dries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got the O3 semi-dry, and for the summer, and right from, I suppose, I don't know, June, I guess, right through to October, probably, will be in it, and really enjoy it. Unless we're going, particularly deep, but generally, farms, anything like that. I love being in that. It's a great suit.
Yeah, it is. And we've run challenges every year in January, I do a beach challenge, and hugely popular. No one's ever cold. I'm cold because I'm not in a wetsuit. I'm in my shorts. But everyone else, and this is the thing, this is what you try and explain to people, is a lot of the barriers are people go, I can't do that because it's going to be freezing cold. It's cold water. And the first thing you have to explain to them is, look, it's completely opposite. You're almost certainly going to be too hot because you're running around in a 6 mil semi-dry wetsuit with the boots on and the gloves and a hood if you want it. And so, of course, when they come and do it, they finish the challenge and they go, that was amazing. I was so warm and comfortable. And you go, yeah, of course you are. We know this, but so that's what a lot of people don't understand. And of course, some people never want a wetsuit. So, again, this is all part of the challenge experience of using these new things, going out of your comfort zone. And then once you've done it, amazing. Then you're a convert, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly.
And kids love getting as well, get them into mud and things like that. Kids love it, and especially get them outside running around. It's brilliant.
It is. And, unfortunately, when I talk about barriers, so, I've seen the worst of society, in actual fact, in the last 3 years in trying to grow Holdfast. And the reason for that is the message that we have as a society is awful. Actually, it's all about money, material, and it's all about being as comfortable as you possibly can by doing as little as you possibly can. And it's all about how much money can you make and how much material stuff can you have. And so when you come to doing these things, you've got that element of society. You've also got the element of risk averseness and litigation. So we've imported, whether we like it or not, over the last few decades, an absolutely insane litigation-based society from the US, where now companies or organizations are so terrified of litigation in case something goes wrong, that they would rather not let their organization or their young people take on a particular thing because they deem the risk is too high because of the litigation factor. And then you've also got the funding. So you've got almost no government support for state schools for activities. You've got a big sort of corporations that they won't fund anything unless A, it's a charitable donation for tax purposes, or B, because of the said risk factors to their image or whatever, they won't get involved. So it's been a colossal battle to get to where I am now, because you're going against society's message. So what we're trying to do is say to people, look, if you want to do something, go out and do it in a hugely fun and inspiring way. You don't have to be afraid of the water. You don't have to be afraid of getting out and being active. Don't worry about the image, social media image side of things. don't worry about all these things. Just go out there and do it. And we've had huge success because when people come and do these challenges, they go, oh yeah, we can do this. So it's a real sort of crusade against where we are now and trying to change things.
Yeah, and hopefully the more people that do the challenges, it becomes infectious, and they tell their friends, and that's the way it should be. Yeah,
that's right. And it's like I said, I call it the Holdfast community because everyone who joins it becomes part of that community, and that your personal mission within that community is to spread it onwards. And I've seen the effect of it. It's been absolutely fantastic to hear people's stories and to see the effect it's had on their lives. And I think it's, for me, certainly, it's about, I started the mission, so I'll finish it.
Yeah.
So and I have to apply my own mindset to myself. No fuss, no excuses, just get it done.
Yeah. So what does the future hold for Holdfast?
Well, this year we've got a big year actually. So we've got sites now in Scotland, Cambridgeshire, Rutland, and hopefully we'll have one in the southeast and the southwest later this year. We've got many challenges booked in and coming up, but what I'm really pushing this year is the Holdfast Schools mission. And what that is basically I've tapped into the business sector and I've said, look, for this amount of money, you can sponsor any state school in the UK. The school can come and do a Holdfast Challenge Day. You get all the PR. You can be there on the day to represent the company. You can present all the T-shirts. You can have company's name on the T-shirts. So you get a huge amount of kudos and you get a genuine and highly visible contribution to the community. And so far, I've managed to get 5 state schools sponsored. And my aim for this year is to get 20. And then hopefully we'll get the domino effect and we'll start seeing big business or any business, instead of deciding to give money to causes that perhaps they know nothing about, they can make a genuine contribution to our society's mental and physical health.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
So if people want to find out more about you and your company, where's the best place for them to contact?
So they can go to the website, which is holdfastchallenge.com, and they can email us from the website, which is, the email is holdfastelite@outlook.com, or they can follow us on social media, on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, and it's all Holdfast Challenge or Holdfast Elite. So they can get in touch any way they want. And, the more people follow us, spread the word, absolutely amazing. That's what we're all about.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, well, we'll put the links in the show notes so people can click on those and make contact straight away. So I think we've got some set questions for you now.
Yeah, that's right.
So our first one is, if you could take 3 people into or under the water, who would you take and why?
So I would take my 3 boys, because I have three sons, 21, 20 and 16 now. The 2 younger ones are both in the Royal Marines. And
excellent.
Because I was away for almost their entire lives, I would love to be able to take the 3 of them diving on a dive so that they can experience what I was experiencing that whole time that I was absent from them. Because I think, as we know as divers, you can't possibly explain what it's like to be underwater unless that person has done it themselves. And I think that's a huge thing for non-divers. Then they get that understanding of exactly what the underwater world's like.
No, that's good. Do they dive now, or is it not something they've started? No. Well, there's always time. You're never too old to start diving. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So what gets you out of your comfort zone?
So I think for me, underground is a big one. So I'm not claustrophobic in the sense that, particularly in diving, I've been in some pretty horrendous places in nil visibility, and I've never been fazed by that. But I think being underground in a small space and feeling that weight above you and knowing that you don't have the freedom of perhaps being underwater.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I've tended to avoid my whole life. I've been underground in various different scenarios, but it's not something I would put myself into voluntarily.
So cave diving wouldn't be on your bucket list then?
No chance. and funnily enough, when I was in the branch, there was a clearance diver who was absolutely fanatical cave diver as well, and wrote several articles for it, and owned a dive shop actually after he left the Navy. And for me, that was madness.
Yeah, it's not for everybody, but you do find this with divers. They have their own sort of speciality, that it might be wreck diving, it might be cave diving, open water. Yeah, so
you'd be all right with wrecks.
Oh yeah, wrecks is fine. I've done many wrecks, and I've really enjoyed it. I find that quite sort of fascinating. But again, it's because you've got that sense of freedom, whether it's real or not, of being underwater. And I think it's very different to having that sort of.
But you can leave a cave, can't you?
You can, but it's being in that. I guess it's almost like that. Not necessarily the physical reality of it, but that sense of having all that stuff above you and perhaps only having one way out or whatever. Whereas when you're in the open sea underwater, I think my mind tells me, oh, well, you've got that vast open space and freedom, if you need it.
It's funny how you see the difference, though, because you could argue the case that you could be in a wreck and still feel the same as you are in a cave. One way in, one way out.
Yeah, you're quite right. And I've been in that scenario quite a few times, and it's never really fazed me at all.
But you'd find it difficult in a cave.
So I've been under a pipeline, buried in soft mud, with just my face sticking up, touching the bottom of the pipeline above my head, working in nil visibility for hours on end, and not bothered at all. But if you put me underground in a small space, I'd be totally out of my comfort zone.
Yeah, strange, isn't it? How everybody reacts differently to different situations. Yeah. So our final question is, if you had a billboard that you could put out there to the world, what would you put on it? It could be a saying, picture, video, but just a message that you'd like the world to see.
Well, you know what I'm going to put on there, don't you? So my billboard would say, no fuss, no excuses, just get it done.
Yeah, short and simple.
Hold fast.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, they're brilliant answers. Yes, and I'm sure our listeners will be looking up your website and seeing what you do, because it's something a little bit different, and especially for our diving audience as well. It's just adds another kind of dimension to things, doesn't it?
It does, and I think one really, really powerful and important message from me that I've learnt is that a lot of people look at what they have done, what was their identity, whether it's a veteran or a previous job, and they think when they leave that and go into something else, they think that's the end of it, and so they'll always look back and go, I was this and I was that. But the way I look at it is completely reverse. I always look at it, well, I became a clearance diver, and so all the values and benefits I get from that gives me the opportunity to use that to benefit other people. So and I think that's a mistake that a lot of people make in our society, is they always look back and think what I was, and they don't never look forward and think, well, how can I use that to do some good and benefit others?
That reminds me, you just reminded me of a guest we spoke to a long while ago on the podcast, and Tech Clark Now we spoke to Tech Clark. He's a big time diver. He got a ministry out in Florida. Does a lot in fitness as well.
Free diving, doesn't he?
Free
Yeah.
diving a lot. And one of the things he said to us, and there's often things some of our guests say to us at times that really stand out. And one thing Tech Clark said to us is transform. Now we spoke to him round about COVID time,
Yeah, we were in
and
lockdown, weren't we?
you've just reminded me of Tech and what he was talking about, and then about how as we gain skills and we kind of then use them to then transform and into other things, positive things, and you're doing that with what you've everything you've learned to transform not so much just you, but transform the people who come on your courses, the people who are scared to put the head underwater, scared to get off the sofa, scared to see what's around the corner and think and challenge themselves. Because I think we are in this woke world where, people are scared to say to other worlds, actually, you can do that. You can, if you push yourself, you can do that. And we should do that a lot more, actually. And because we're worried about this whole business that somebody might be offended, because they're being pushed. But actually, until people are pushed, they learn new skills and think, actually, I was able to do that. How cool is that? And especially with youngsters and that. And I think it's brilliant. So yeah,
Well,
transform. We
if
like
we
it.
if we never test our character, we'll never grow it.
No,
Yeah.
If everyone stays in the comfort zone, you've reached your limit and that's it. It'll never change. So that's why, life's not about becoming as comfortable as possible. Life is about living, and to live, you have to experience all the success and all the failure, and you have to get out there and put yourself out of your comfort zone. And that's what it's about. Because, if you've got millions of pounds and you live a life where you do nothing but just sort of bum around and eat, expensive stuff and, buy expensive stuff.
Yeah.
Well, by the time you get to the end, you're going to look back and think, well,
yeah.
okay, that was it. I didn't do anything with the rest of my life. So that's the message we're trying to get.
Yeah, and food, our relationship with food is changing. It's become much too easy. And it's much too easy to sit on the armchair and order and it
Yep.
bang, it's delivered to your door, and things like that. And
Yep.
I think as a society, you see it around you, where people are not getting challenged, not doing exercise and things like that. And hopefully the people that go to your courses will suddenly think, actually, I probably should join a gym, because I found that was a real, struggle to do that bit of running or swimming or something like that. And you think of these people in their 20s or 30s and 40s and 50s, and actually life don't end there, and there's lot more life in us.
Life has no limits. That's what you've
No.
got to live
That's
by.
exactly
It's
it.
limitless. Yeah.
And the final thing I'll say is, interestingly enough, we've had a tremendous amount of women in their 60s, in their late 50s and 60s, who've done the challenges.
Yeah.
A huge amount, and they've been absolutely phenomenal. And I will say right now that the women tend to have a much stronger mindset than the men, because the women have less ego and they tend to just get in there, get it done, and have a real laugh and enjoy themselves. Where a lot of guys are put off by that exposure of, okay, I'm not as fit as I thought I was, or I might look like this, or I'm conscious of that. Whereas the women just tend to come and smash it. And
Interesting.
It's been really, really interesting. So yeah, there we go. So time for the men to step up.
Yeah, come on.
Ego is a tough one to get through with men, and you see it in the gym, you see it in diving, where they won't ask for help, or even on the dive boat won't do buddy checks because they're perceived. They think themselves of a certain level, can't do a buddy check. Oh no, can't do that sort of thing, and it's mad, And I've seen it. I've been on a dive boat and seen it.
Yeah, and we've seen it on the quayside, a guy talking to us saying, you're not really diving if you're not 20 meters down.
yeah, it's madness. Like, and I think it's incredibly dangerous as well. Ego is a killer for diving.
Yes.
I mean, that's an absolute fact. And I think, the one thing people don't realize about diving is yes, it's a fantastic sport, massively, massively rewarding. And I would urge anybody to go and learn how to dive because it's a wonderful thing. However, it is one of the only activities where if you get it wrong, there is an extremely high chance of death. And I think people, when they come into the diving world, the one thing you have to do is let go of your ego, because this is why it's all about that sort of mindset and focus of doing your checks, being calm, always the calmness in diving, and that's what will save your life. And I've experienced that myself a few times over my career where things have gone badly wrong underwater, but by staying calm and focused, you can get out of it. And I think if anyone has an ego, diving is the last place they should be going, because actually diving is all about, on the surface anyway, it's all about community, isn't it? Watching out for each other, helping each other, and always getting people to double check you before you get in the water. Once you're dressed in, carry out your final checks, and that's the way it should be.
Yeah, very true. Yeah.
Brilliant.
So that's been a really interesting conversation, and I think we've covered an awful lot, and hopefully people will be very entertained by that, and hopefully look you up.
Get on the course.
Yeah,
and they can get their they can get their Hold Fast t-shirt.
Yes, it's a great logo. Challenge. Yeah, really good. Yeah. So
and I look forward to seeing both of you on a Hold Fast challenge this year.
You've got one in Cambridge, you say?
Yeah, so we will be operating from Graffham Water in Cambridgeshire.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty local to us. Yeah, we go right by there to our local dive site, don't we?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. So we're always organising challenges, always advertising them, and always growing the different locations. So I'll definitely keep you informed.
Yeah, do. Yeah, because we're always up for a challenge.
Yeah, and you guys would love it. I know that for a fact. So yeah I will do.
All right, nice one.
Well, that's been really good, and thank you for being on the Big Scuba podcast.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
That was brilliant. So really good. Yeah, so thanks so much for making contact and bringing that to the podcast.
Yeah, brilliant.
No problem at all. I hope it was of whatever interest it was.
Well, I think it will sort of tick a lot of boxes for listeners, divers and non-divers as well, because you've got that element of life in it, which is really important. Yeah.
Whether you're preparing for a local club dive, looking forward to a warm water dive overseas, or excited about the prospect of exploring a new wreck, life is full of adventures and challenges.
But what if life's unexpected moments catch up with you?
Good point. Are you and your loved ones prepared for the unexpected?
This is where Sports Financial Services can help.
Sports Financial Services are your specialists for scuba diving life insurance, income protection and critical illness cover.
With cover from them, you can protect your family's future whilst pursuing your passion for diving with financial peace of mind.
Their tailored plans can help ensure you and your loved ones are financially protected should an accident happen.
Their flexible policies can adapt to your unique lifestyle so you can focus on the things you love most.
So speak to one of their scuba diving specialists today and join with other individual and club divers who trust Sports Financial Services with their life insurance, income protection and critical illness cover needs.
Visit them at www.sports-fs.co.uk or call 0345 565 0935 to find the perfect plan for you, your scuba diving activities and your family.
Even if you have an existing policy in place, they will be happy to provide a free review to show how their cover compares.
Sports Financial Services, providing financial peace of mind, one diving adventure at a time.
Woo. Yeah, and what before we go, what are your guys' backgrounds in terms of the diving then?
Do you want to go first, Jim?
Yeah, so I got to know Ian at the gym, and from there knew that he was a scuba diver, and I learned to dive July 2020 I qualified. So
Fantastic.
yeah, in between all the everything that was going on in the world. So I've done open, advanced, and rescue.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I
And
did
in
rescue.
the UK, you learned in the UK.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So Gildenberg did my open water.
Visibility like that.
It was
Yeah,
horrendous.
great.
Well, I don't mean horrendous that I didn't enjoy it, but it was just like the visibility wasn't great. And then everything else has been at Stony, local lake, did rescue course, and then we've dived. I haven't dived abroad yet, but everything else has been in the UK, so the Farne Islands, Loch Long, Lundy,
off
Swanage.
our coast.
Yeah, so yeah.
And that's and I think personally that's a great way to learn, because all joking aside, is if you could learn to dive in the UK waters or equivalent, when you come to dive in these areas which are actually hugely pleasurable to dive. Not saying that UK isn't, but what I mean, the environment is you'll feel very, very capable, because if you jump in and you've got 25 meters of visibility and the water's 35 degrees, I mean, straight away you're far more relaxed and enjoying the moment than if you're constantly focused on nil vis and the cold and all the accoutrements that go with diving in cold water as well can be quite inhibiting. So I think I would say it's almost like an essential apprenticeship for diving, rather than learning in Mauritius or somewhere crazy like that, because then going from that environment into diving in the UK waters, I think would be far harder.
Yeah.
We spoke to a few people. We've been at a Crystal Sea Christmas dinner, and we were on a table of 12 people.
Yeah.
And we were the only people who dived in the UK.
Really?
None of them dived in the UK.
They thought we were crazy.
Yeah, and it's like you're missing so much. And to tell them that we actually, and I spoke to other people like at the gym and what have you about diving, and they're like astounded that you can dive in the UK in a wetsuit. And it's like, you don't have to go down at like 50 meters, 40 meters or whatever. You can be at 5 meters and have tons of life, be in a wetsuit and have an absolute great time.
And I think the comment you made earlier about, the guys, about the ego saying that, well, you're shallower than 20 meters. Well, I'll be completely blunt with you. If I was to jump back in the water now for pleasure, there's very little chance that I would go deeper than 10 to 15 meters.
Yeah.
Because, what are you going to see? I mean, it's unless you're diving on a wreck or something, which, okay, each to their own. If you like that, that's great. But if you want to see marine life and enjoy yourself, you want to be shallow. And I think a lot of people are obsessed with depth. And once it's dark, it's dark.
It's like they think they're getting some badge, and somebody who I know said to me at Christmas, said, "Oh, I'm so bored going to Stony Cove." And when I look, all he does is on a rebreather, goes down to the hydro box at Stony Cove, which is, black, freezing cold. There's nothing down there apart from this concrete box, and just sits there for an hour. And it's like, diving's got to be more than that.
Yeah.
And I just don't get it. I understand for a training point of view that he wants to do it, but nearly every weekend.
Not for pleasure.
I don't get it. Change it, mess around. And we went to this great lake called Spring Lakes, just further up from Stony Cove.
It's a water activity park as well, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
And they've got a diving lake there.
And that'd be really good for you as well. I'll tell you, there's some great they're just opening up. Really good, friendly lot near where they near.
It's called Divers Time. It's a BZAC club, but open to.
And the divers won't go there because it's only 6 meters.
Yeah.
Right. But it's a great lake, really good visibility, and they're trying to get it going. They're BZAC and SSI, I believe.
Mm.
And we went there last autumn, had a really good day. Really nice diving, shows around, great facilities, CAF, the lot. They do training there. Access to the water, getting in is gentle, sloped, the lot. You could run in, right? And I know the divers won't go because, the divers who like to go to Stony Cove or every weekend and do 30 meters won't be seen
Yeah.
to go at 6 meters because
Yeah.
they're on a rebreather or twin set and they
Yeah.
think, oh, but diving in shallow waters has its own skill.
Mm.
Of course. Yeah, of course. And also, I think the word you just hit the nail on the head there is the rebreather word. Is people buy rebreathers and then feel like they have to justify having them by doing rebreather dives. So you can't do a shallow water dive in a rebreather because people will say, well, what did you get the rebreather for? And and all these things. And I think there's a lot of, unfortunately, there is a lot of ego in diving. And there's a lot of machismo, and that's why, particularly rebreathers, it's so dangerous because people tend to forget about common sense, and they, like you say, they want a badge. They want to say, I've been down to 80 meters, I've been down to 60 meters, I've dived this wreck, I've dived that wreck. And okay, you're always going to have that, but they are not the type of people that I would dive with. And and I think also, when you work as a diver, it's very, very different to diving for pleasure. People always say to me, oh, you must have seen some amazing things as a diver. And actually, do you know what? I haven't seen that many. I've seen some, of course, but the problem is when you're working, you're totally focused on the job, and all you can see is what's in front of you. And you might be in for 4, 5, 6 hours, whatever it is. Then you're out working on deck, and then doing your 12-hour shift, and then repeat the next day. And it could be nil visibility as well. So when you do that for many, many years, you actually realize that a pleasurable dive is a dive where you can totally relax, not worry about decompression, and see as much as possible and enjoy it. That's what's an enjoyable dive. Not trying to tick a box for the sake of comparing it to someone else.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so true.
And what about you, Ian? What was your background, mate?
So diving was something I wanted to do years ago and never really got round to it for all sorts of reasons. And I started diving about 10 years ago, and really enjoyed it. Never really set out to sort of go into tech diving. I don't think I'm organized enough to be a tech diver, to be honest. Really, I don't think it would suit me. And I think if something went wrong, I don't think I'd act quick enough to sort myself out. So I'm like, I like seeing the wildlife, and now my daughter's now learned, particularly like getting her into the water and, having great fun with her, and it's just, I enjoyed being a dive master as well for Crystal Seas. I don't know how many dives I've done, 400, I suppose, 500 over the years.
Yeah.
A big chunk of that would be at Stony, doing teaching and things like that. I really enjoy doing the Stony Cove stuff. I think it's good fun, especially with the kids and that, seeing their enthusiasm and motivation and things like that. I think that's brilliant. It's just nice going for a bimble and seeing the wild. I love going to the Farne Islands. That's an annual pilgrimage, going up there. Just diving, really. I don't really worry about diving so much over the winter, so much these days, because I think, well, off our coast is rubbish, really, over the winter. And I've been to all the quarries. They don't change that much.
No.
I've done 3 degrees water. Wasn't particularly pleasant, really.
Yeah.
And I just think, if there's a reason, I'll do it. I like learning.
Yeah.
So the next thing I want to do is side mount, because I like to learn how to do side mount and do that. I've done twin sets, dive with twin sets. Don't mind it. Again, I only really use twin set if there's a particular reason, really. If we're going to be doing a bit more time underwater or something like that. But otherwise, I'm happy being on a single 15 litre and being down at 10 meters in a O3 semi-dry, really.
Yeah,
Sorry, go on.
We've done a rebreather tri dive, both of us, haven't we? Just to get the experience, and that was really, really good. So I think it's good to have an understanding of how it operates, and just get that feeling of not blowing bubbles as such.
Yeah, and I think rebreathers, there's a time and a place for them, but the one thing I would say is, be very, very careful with rebreathers. I've seen a lot of deaths, and 99% of deaths of rebreathers come from human error. And it's if you're going to dive a rebreather, dive it somewhere safe, as in have something where the elements are not particularly challenging, where you can go from A to B, have a great dive, enjoy it, and not worry too much about the rebreather itself. And obviously you're always checking it, but if you push the boundaries in a rebreather, and particularly a civilian one, because the military rebreathers are very different, very, very, very high spec, very different, whereas the civilian ones are, yes, they're much, much better than years ago when the Buddy Inspirations came out. They're much more advanced now, but at the same time, unless you have a very, very in-depth knowledge of your set, it can be very easily turned fatal. And I say that not to be an alarmist, but that's a fact. Rebreather diving is extremely dangerous. So anyone who wants to do it, by all means, but I would say do it to a level where you can enjoy it, not to a level where you're putting yourself at any additional risk that you don't have to. As in ego, that comes back to the ego,
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and I think we always say, diving is about coming out smiling.
Know
that you've had an enjoyable dive. There's no point doing it otherwise, because why?
Well, I'll tell you, just before I go, I dived for 22 years. Thousands and thousands of minutes underwater, all over the world, all different scenarios. And do you know what? My favorite dive ever was in Gibraltar. Well, I was in the Navy, and we went outside of the South Mole, the harbour at Gibraltar. And just outside the South Mole, not far off it, is a wreck. And it's very shallow, probably, I don't know, maybe 15 meters or something. And I went down, we dived it on scuba, and I got onto this wreck, and I was on the deck of it. Everyone else had sort of gone off doing their own thing. And there was a little pipe sticking up from the deck, tiny pipe, probably, the actual hole in the middle of the pipe was maybe an inch in diameter. And I stopped, and just out the corner of my eye, I saw a little worm come up out of this pipe and just sort of stay there. And I thought, oh, look at that. That's bizarre. It's like a little sea worm. And then I realized, actually, it was an octopus.
Oh, wow.
and I kept my hand next to this pipe, just sort of mid-water. And this little tentacle came up, and it sort of looked around, and it came closer to my hand and then pulled back. And I didn't move for about 10 minutes. And eventually, this pair of eyes popped out of this tiny little pipe, and it looked at me, and it had such deep, incredible intelligence and an emotion that I was totally transfixed by it. And eventually it came out, and it grabbed my hand with its tentacle, and it jumped onto my hand.
Right.
And I was sat there on the deck of this wreck with this tiny little octopus looking straight at me. And I must have been there in total for about probably the best part of 20 minutes altogether. And then eventually I put it back on the pipe, and I had to peel it off my hand, and it went back in the pipe, and that was it. It was done. And, that dive was back in 2004. And I still remember that as my favorite dive I've ever done.
Wow.
That connection, isn't it?
That connection, and something as simple and as easy as that, not some crazy deep dive, not seeing whatever it was or achieving anything. It was just that total pleasure, just like a privilege to be underwater and to have that experience. And that's what diving's about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really good. So
fantastic, guys. Okay, well, I'll leave you to your Sunday, and just let me know.
Yes, will. Yeah, and just keep in touch. Yep.
Yeah,
I will do. I will do. And could you send me do you have the details of the place you were talking about?
The Divers Time. Yes, I'll drop you an email with the address and the details. And we did a podcast with them, so it might be worth a listen as well. You can hear a bit more about them.
I'll check them out. I'm always on the lookout for new sites and
that's a really good site up there. There's quite a few lakes up there doing different things.
They do paddle boarding, open water swimming, and they do that wake thing on the lines.
Where the wakeboarding, yeah. Well, that's the same as Fox Lake. That's where I started from. So I do it.
Yeah, I'll drop you an email in a bit, and I'll let you know. Okay.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. And
thank you.
I'll stay in touch.
Yes, do, and have a great Sunday, and thank you very much.
Okay. Have a good one.
Thank you, guys.
Cheers,
Pleasure.
Rob. Thank you.
Bye. Hey, there we go.
There we go. Well, that was Rob Hinton.
Hinton. Yeah.
We want to say thank you very much to Robert for coming on and giving us his life journey in the diving world.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see how he's progressed from military, commercial, and now doing this amazing thing with Holdfast.
A life spent in the water, one way or the other.
And, aquatic.
And quite a few of our guests have similar sort of lives, really, don't they? Start off in swimming, snorkeling, whatever, as a youngster, and build a career and a life, still having that connection.
Yes, yeah, but it's just shows how intense getting into the Navy underwater area is, doesn't it? That training just sounded
if it wasn't tough, everyone would do it, and it has to be tough because at the drop of a hat, we expect our service men and women to put their lives at risk and come back. And that's always the thing, isn't it? They put their lives at risk every day, and the idea is that they come back, and unfortunately it's not always possible. But thank goodness we are, the British training is regarded as one of the highest in the world, and especially Royal Marines, Navy, all that, and not our first mine clearance either, we have to say. So if you're listening to this and you like the idea of this of mine clearance, we spoke to back in 2020 in December, way back in 2020. So in our first year, episode 49, we spoke to the backpack divers, Beth and Elliot. Elliot was a former mine clearance himself. And then we spoke to the team in Portsmouth, didn't we, for episode 50 in December?
We did, with Mike and Al, and they had
their lucky pants.
Yes, we should have asked Rob about if he'd got any lucky pants. So if you listen to episode 50, one of the guys, he always wears this pair of budgie smugglers with they're military ones, aren't they?
Which he had on display for you.
Yes, he
presented. That wasn't for my purpose, that's for your purpose. He wanted to show his... It was a thong, wasn't it, if I remember rightly?
I don't know. He wasn't wearing them. He just had them there, in his hands.
Cozy pouch.
Yeah. But it just shows what characters we've spoken to. But so we have spoken to several other people involved in the underwater mine clearance area.
I think when you're in that game, you've got to have a sense of humor, haven't you? You've got to have a sense of fun and a sense of, because that release of stress and pressure has got to come somewhere, isn't it? You're so regimentally trained to the highest point.
Yeah.
So sense of humor is got to be a must.
Definitely. And I think with Rob, it's been a pretty intense commercial diving career he's had as well. And then now he's in this Holdfast project, and it's really giving back to the community, I think.
And so much money to charity as well, which is really cool. And it's good for companies as well. I've done back in the former life of working for a bank, done a few management training things. Nothing as fun as exciting as that, I have to say. But yeah, that would have been good, and I quite like that. I can think of people at CrossFit have talked about various like muddy
Tougher
things,
mudder
stuff
things,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah. And I think anything like that, you just get a sense of, it is a sense of achievement, and then doing that will spur you on to do something else, or
Yeah,
think, oh, I can run a half marathon and then a marathon, and yeah, it
yeah,
just becomes quite a sort of infectious thing for you personally, but then you're also showing others around you, what is possible.
yeah. And it's interesting about what you said about women in the water as well. That
Mm.
you know probably take to it easier than some of the men do, which is
Yeah,
good.
because of the ego factor. Men predominantly do have this ego and chest banging. So just
Every day at the gym, we start with a chest bang. Bah.
always eyeing each other up, thinking, oh,
Slap,
what are they
slap,
doing?
we slap the weights together as loud as we can.
Yeah, so, but yeah, well, it's good to hear that the
It
women are a
is,
little
and
less.
also good to hear good names mentioned of our lovely people at O3 and Northern
Yes.
Divers.
Yeah, yeah, and obviously the connection. We've spoken about rebreathers, so our sponsor Narked at 90 is a specialist in rebreather equipment and servicing.
Yeah, did you know they're beyond technical?
They are. Yes, look them up. www.narkedat90.com for all
Yeah,
your diving equipment needs and servicing and dive
yeah,
computers.
exactly. And and don't forget your insurance as well, because the lovely people at Sports Financial Services sponsoring this podcast as well, that you've probably heard already on the if you're going through the adverts that they sponsor us. And if you need insurance, us divers need insurance, especially if you
Yes,
get into problems with it and you need medical care. So make sure you got it.
yes, definitely. Yeah. So I think that was a great conversation with Mr. Rob Hinton, and definitely look him up and yeah, sign yourself up for some challenges.
Yeah, and funny enough, we just come from a viewing as well, haven't we?
Yes, yeah. So he mentioned obviously commercial diving, saturation diving, and yeah, we have just been lucky to have a screening of the Last Breath film that comes
Yeah.
out or will be out in America in February, late February 2025.
Yeah, we'll be giving a review on that either after this, or you might have heard it before, depending on how it all works out. Anyway, but there will be a proper review about that.
Yes, and don't forget to look up our conversation with Chris Lemons. He was the real life diver, saturation diver that
Last
found
breath.
himself, stuck on the North Sea seabed in need of rescue.
Which I think was episode 163.
63, yeah, and the
Right,
actual
for memory recall.
very good. We need a quiz.
Go lay down now.
Yeah, so I'll put the link to the podcast and the YouTube video that we had with Chris Lemons. That's on our YouTube channel as well. So don't forget to go to the Big Scuba YouTube channel, where you can catch up with all our adventures and other videos of podcast guests.
More is coming.
Yes, absolutely. Right then, we better get on with our Sundays.
Certainly will. So thanks for listening. And for right now, that was
The Big Scuba Podcast.
Now that does wrap up today's episode of the Big Scuba Podcast. But if you want to hear more from the podcast, make sure you hit that subscribe or follow button depending on what platform you are listening on. That way you will never miss an episode from us. But if you are listening on Apple Podcasts and did enjoy what you heard today, we would really appreciate it if you head to the show page to leave a 5-star rating and review. It really does help us. If you do, please take a screenshot of that review and send it to us on Instagram, and we'll give you a shout out to say a big thank you. If you have any questions for us or anything that has been mentioned in today's episode, be sure to reach out to us on any of our social media platforms or send us an email. The links are in the show notes. We will get back to you no matter what. If you have made it to this point in the episode, we both want to say a big thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.